Howdy, howdy. Sue Devil here, and welcome to the seventh and probably the final video, really the summary video of our Dawi anti-cavalry testing. I really want to summarize how we got here and how I made this seven video series, and it's like happens so many times, just a comment. I'm very appreciative of comments of all the time. I love comments, but they spur on so many new videos. I learn so much and I get to explore a lot of very interesting things. And the comment was very simple. I know dwarf warriors with great weapons, longbeards with great weapons, and miners, they also technically have great weapons. They're armor piercing. I've done lots of testing, 2 years worth of testing, and these guys just do not stand up against infantry. They are very poor against other infantry. And I've lamented that fact that they're so weak in the front line. And the comment was, hey, seeing as cavalry often has really, really poor stats, do you think these might be really an unintended role or a misuse of a role or a misunderstanding of what their role is? And could it be that these units are very good against cavalry who have low stats? And you see we got these Empire Knights. They have 26 melee attack, 28 melee defense. So if you have 30 and 38 or 22 and 30, you're going to do it right. Is it really the case that these dwarf warriors and miners and longbeards with great weapons are the Dawi version of cheap anti-cav? They're the Dawi version of Empire Spearmen. They are the Dawi version of halberdiers. Could that be the case? And so I started testing, and I started testing against the Empire Knights very specifically, and it was shocking how good these units did. So what I ended up doing is expanding the test a little bit and expanding the units. So, we brought in basic longbeards because I wanted to see, I've tested longbeards over so many things, and they're a good anchor and a pivot to understand how they work. And longbeards are just my favorite all-around unit. They're an amazing unit. And we thought it brought in the pure Dawi anti-cav slayers and the most awesome Dawi anti-cav giant slayers, and we started to run batteries of tests against these units. And we went against the Empire Knights, the squig hoppers from the greenskins at 650, or where are they, 500, very cheap, armor piercing, anti-infantry. We went up against the more expensive Cold One riders, and then we went up against 2 sets of chariots. So I wanted to summarize that and look at really which of these are the best. And I'll go over each test in a very brief summary fashion. But I will say, after we add them up, they're all very close. And they are close enough, and according to their actual role in terms of overall value, that they're all good. All of them. And it's really dependent on your play style and the function you want to fit these units to. Do you like a more slow, grindy game with lots of units? Yes, well then miners are really going to be good for you. Dwarf warriors are great weapons. Maybe just your longbeards with great weapons. Do you want the chance to really alpha strike someone where you catch them with a double Rune of Wrath and Rune and get them killed quickly? Then giant slayers are going to be more for you. Do you want something in between value? Really, slayers are a really good value and they're a good overall unit. So I'm going to go over and go to the spreadsheet, and we will look at these individual tests, and we'll look at a summary. I've rated them all, and we'll look at which is the most valuable unit of these 6. And then after that's kind of the end of the video, we're going to do a little bit of testing because I had some more suggestions, and I found a really interesting test because of a really great suggestion. It just keeps happening. Thank you very much, and I'll show you at the end of the video, and I'll show you a little bit of combined arms just for fun, and we'll look at them there. So let's go to the spreadsheet, and we're going to see what is showing. So this is the way I sort of summarized them. I basically looked at their finishing hit points, the gold differential, the gold per minute, the gold ratio, and gave them each a ranking 1 through 6 in each element, added them up here, and found out who was the lowest, and that is the winner of the category or the specific battle. So against the Gorbeast chariots, we saw our giant slayers absolutely, completely and utterly obliterated the Gorbeast chariot killing them in 26 seconds, as opposed to, just to get a feel for it, as opposed to our longbeards, which we had two of them that needed 196 seconds. So almost basically a ninth of the speed, They need 9 times more time with 2 longbeards versus 1 set of giant slayers. And they won 1,126 gold per minute. They are ridiculous in this fight. But also, guess who showed up? Our basic miners and our longbeards with great weapons. Our longbeards, regular longbeards, were very in the distant last place in this particular battle. So looking at the regular Chaos Chariots, in this battle, turns out our longbeards with great weapons were the best unit by quite a bit. Our longbeards with great weapons were great against the regular Chaos Chariots. They were first in 2 categories, second in another, and fourth in the gold ratio. So they won a lot of gold. They won it reasonably fast, and they kept a lot of their health, 70% of their health left after. Very, very good. Now, in the battle against the Cold One Riders, in this battle, it was our Dwarf Warriors with great weapons that showed up in number 1. Number 1 in hit points, gold difference, 3 in gold per minute, 4 in gold ratio. Really, really good. And past them, they were all pretty much the same. 13 to 16 when you add them up is saying, really, against Cold One Riders, the Dwarf Warriors with great weapons are the best, but everyone is good. They're all good in this matchup, with our miners being second. And they're all a good value. Really, we're not evaluating power. We're evaluating value, and that's the importance of this testing and the difference. If you just want to evaluate power, well, you pick the giant slayers every time. They killed the Cold One Riders in 30 seconds. They are powerful, but they cost a lot to do it. So the next one was the squigs, and this is where we got the first real negative value, and our giant slayers lost 100 gold, and they lost it at 415 gold per minute. They were terrible against the squigs, and number 1 by a mile were our miners. They were just amazing versus these squigs. They are 7 total points versus basically 10 through 20. They did very, very good. And our regular slayers did quite good in this, and our longbeards did also very good. And I think the last one is the first one. We started with the Empire Knights. And again, our longbeards with great weapons. Number 1 did very good. 1 with hit points left, 67% of the hit points. Gold difference 2. 3 on the gold per minute, and everyone else was pretty similar. So then I went and added up each of the 5 tests. I added up their total score to come up with the end ranking to see which unit is the most valuable out of all of these 6 in terms of dwarf anti-cav, right? In terms of dwarf backline protection. And lo and behold, for all of you who have been with me for 2 years of testing, guess who was number 1 overall? Our longbeards with great weapons are the best value. Wow, I have just been so disappointed with longbeards with great weapons in their frontline testing. They do so poorly compared to Chaos Warriors with great weapons and great swords and all the other great weapon infantry, but in the back line, they are a fantastic value. Now, this is to understand this. These are all very close. They go from 64 to 77 in the total adding. Like our actual slayers ended up with the worst value. Now, intuitively, anyone who's played the Dawi knows slayers are good. So all of these units are good in the back line. There are no bad units. I started with that, and I'll come back to this again. Out of these units, they're all good in the back line. All of them. Now, they're not all good in the same situation, and they are not all suited to the same function. That's where you have to make decisions about how you want your backline to operate. I will say, if you don't know what else to bring, just bring some longbeards with great weapons, and they will suffice in most situations. If you just want to if you don't want to worry about miners and dwarf warriors and slayers and everything else, just bring 4 longbeards with great weapons in your backline, set them up in your backline, protect your archers with them, and you'll be just fine. End of story. Grab miners, dwarf warriors, great weapons, longbeard slayers, giant slayers, whatever you like. So that is sort of the total of our test. Is really the best value is our longbeards with great weapons. I am incredibly happy about this because, and those of you, I know those of you guys have been making comments for so long, I know you guys know the testing we've done, especially with the longbeards with great weapons, all the ways we've tried to test them, and I know right now you're as happy as I am as how powerful they are. And Captain Beardy, thank you for the comment, and thank everyone for the comments. All comments are always so good. So like I say, if you want to put some analysis, I've seen amazing analysis. I've seen interesting thoughts or just questions or commentary, lore, funny sayings. I had like a little, row, row, row your boat. Oh, I can't forget. It's a funny little ditty, but I laugh at the comments, and some people just drop by to say hi. I love comments, and this is all from comments. Like, this has made me a better Dawi player already, and this will make you a better Dawi player if you understand miners, dwarf warriors with great weapons, and longbeards with great weapons are not for frontline engagements. Period. If you understand that from this testing, you have improved your ability to manage and play the Dawi massively. Because longbeards with great weapons are fantastic in the back line. So are miners, so are dwarf warriors and great weapons. What they are awful at is frontline engagements against other infantry. They're terrible. And I've done so much testing to prove that beyond a shadow of a doubt. They are terrible in the front line, but they're awesome in the back line. And our longbeards with great weapons is the best value. So again, you don't know what else to do. You don't know how you're going to manage your back line, who's going to protect it. Everything. Got 4 longbeards with great weapons. It's 3,000 gold. Your back line, your 4 quarrelers, or your 2 cannons, or your 3 your 3 bolt throwers are protected at that point, and they're going to be protected very well, because longbeards with great weapons, aside from all this testing, we did not include, remember, this testing did not include their charge defense against large. And it didn't include their ability to encourage other units, or the fact that they're immune to psychology. These are all great things about the longbeards with great weapons that all are great. And that's actually what's great at the Slayers too. They are immune to psychology, and they will fight to the death. And that's one of the reasons why they're so good. So, fantastic. So let's go back to do a little bit of testing, because I found out something really interesting from some other comments. So again, to reiterate, all of these are great backline units. Now, turns out I had a question. Could you, Sue Devil, take a look at another unit? So I'm going to grab a Gorby's Chariot here. We're going to fight that Gorby's Chariot. And we're going to bring the miner, and we're going to back them up with a Quarreler. Okay, so we're going to back them up with a Quarreler. And this is something that you may end up trying to defend your back line. This is pretty normal. So let's just make sure we're on UT fields or the defenders. Okay, so I'm just going to run a quick battle to show you something interesting, because for me it's incredibly interesting. So I just want to get the baseline fight in so you can see how it looks. Then I'm going to look at a second test in the same scenario. So if you had, your miners here, we're, let's say, defending your Quarrelers, and we're just going to take Quarreler's ability to fire, and we're going to send him in to fight. Okay, we're going to send these Gorby's Chariot have gotten into your backline. They are going to run over. You're not going to be able to run away from. Let us go and fight them. So we'll send them in to fight with the miners and your Quarrelers to go and fight. I'm not going to use the arrows for a very specific reason. So we'll get that fight going, and your Gorby's Chariots are ridiculous. They're eating up your miners. They're armor piercing. They're your Quarrelers. Everyone's getting ready to rout because they do cause fear, and they're beating the crap out of our units, and we're not getting a whole lot of damage in ourselves. And you can see we're wavering. We're doing our Dawi, brave Dawi are fighting their best, but these Gorby's Chariots are beating the crap out of us, and there we go. So it's a decisive defeat. So we're end that battle. All right, and we lost 74. So we'll just keep that in mind. 74. I've done this test where they've lost as much as 90, but we'll do 74. Okay, a group of miners with a group of Quarrelers. The question I was asked is, Sue Devil, what do you think about Quarrelers with great weapons? Do they have a place? Are they worth bringing? Is there scenarios where they might be worth bringing? So I thought, well, I'll just try and test them in combined arms. So let's grab a group of Quarrelers with great weapons, and we'll put them up in the same scenario. We'll just see. They cost an extra 50 gold. They don't have shields. They're not as good skirmishers. They're not as good counter skirmish as regular Quarrelers, or even your Rangers. So we put them sort of in the same scenario, and we'll take them off so they can't shoot. Okay, grab them together and start that battle and get things going. So we'll get our quarrelers with great weapons in there to start and join that fight. You know, Gorby's chariots are tough, but they have a ton of armor. The thing is, they don't have a whole lot of melee defense. Our quarrelers can actually get something done, and bang, there we go. Just look at this. Take a look. I know they lost a lot of health, but I still have 42 out of 60 quarrelers left, and I just killed a Gorby's chariot worth 1,200. This is 600 and 325. That's 925. We just killed a Gorby's chariot. So what does this mean? I don't know exactly. It's something that might be worth trying in some fight. So we'll go back and I'll show you something else really quick. But quarrelers with great weapons may have a legitimate use in some matchups, and I'll kind of go and show the explanation in terms of your backline. Now, oftentimes when you are playing the Dawi, you may end up having a backline like you might have a Giant Slayer, a Dragonback Slayer, and you could have the where we go, Giant Slayer, okay, we could have a Bugman's Rangers, a couple of them, and we might have some Uthar's Raiders. You know, sort of a backline where we have one Dragonback Slayers, one Giant Slayers, two Bugman's Rangers, and Uthar's Raiders. You know, a backline that's a little more expensive, a little pricey. It's only 5 units, and you're going to protect these 3 units with your Giant Slayers. Now, if you compare that, you could actually pair these two, where you have miners and quarrelers, and that's it, and they protect each other. You could actually have a backline that looks something like this. 5 miners and 5 quarrelers with great weapons. They're 77.75. These are 77.50. These two backlines, you got basically double the backline for the same price. Now, you don't have all these elite units that kill super fast and do these amazing things, but you basically have, you know, double the firepower. So, and the ability of, if you see someone coming in to charge your quarrelers with great weapons, you charge at them with your miners, and you take your quarrelers with great weapons and charge in there too. And they have the exact same stats as your dwarf warriors with great weapons, in terms of weapon strength. You grab your dwarf warriors with great weapons, your quarrelers with great weapons. The only difference is they don't have the melee defense. So they have the same weapon strength and the same melee attack as your dwarf warriors with great weapon. They have 10 less melee defense. Very, very interesting. And another question I had is, what about units joining together? So here's an example where another very quick example of using this concept of combined arms. Like you can combine these in an infinite number of ways. There's just so many different ways to combine them and to test them. I just could never do all this testing. There's no way, but we can look at interesting ideas. And if we go and say grab these greenskins where we had our squig herd, this is a perfect example where you get one group of miners, and if you had a combined arms, you could have a group of Giant Slayers, which are completely awful in this matchup because they die so fast. Well, you get your your miners in there who are very good in this battle anyways. And you can imagine very easily having your miners take every charge for your Slayers. All they're there to do is to take the charge for the Slayers, but by the way, they will do some good damage. Like, they will do reasonable damage. But you put these guys a little bit up ahead, and we grab them both, and we start this battle. Now, these squigs were getting a massive value on our Giant Slayers, but we get the job done. We're gonna kill them right. Like, what do? We took 30 seconds, and our Giant Slayers have 60 out of 60 models. They haven't even lost one model. Lost 400 health. You know, it was our miners that took the brunt of it, but our miners still did not too bad, by the way. They killed one. I mean, these guys killed 12 times as many. They killed 12, but we know they do good. They're pulling value in this actual encounter. I mean, that's 500 gold gone. You know, we lost what? You know, 200 maybe? It's a very, very strong value. So these kind of builds and putting our back lines together, really, they have an infinite number of combos. Now, I might do some more testing with these quarrelers at some point with great weapons, but I don't know. Exactly how I'll do it. But it's not going to be on the front burner. It's going to be on the back burner. Just getting that comment, hey, can these be useful? And the answer is, hell yeah. They can be useful. I mean, this has opened up a whole new part of gameplay for me, and a whole group potential of gameplay for anybody else. And we look at, you know, some basic things when we set up our back lines. Now, the next step is really, how do we optimize our backline engagements depending on who we're fighting? Well, you know, we can really start looking at that. If we're going to be fighting against a unit with really potentially heavy cav, you know, like Britonia, you can see, well, and it depends. If they have no missiles, you can bring Giant Slayers as many as you like, because they can do nothing with missiles to your Giant Slayers. You know, if you're going to be playing against Britonia, you know, often they have a lot of units, but their cav is very good. You know, you can bring a couple miners and a couple of Longbeards and maybe one group of Giant Slayers, or you can bring a regular Slayers. You can start mixing up how you're going to defend your backline, because maybe you want a group of Giant Slayers back there to make them very afraid to bring anything into your backline. You know, maybe you want a massive group of 4 miners and 4 Dwarf Warriors with great weapons. Like, have a huge group in that backline to defend, because maybe you have a lot of artillery. Like, if you have some really expensive artillery, like let's say you had, a Goblobber and 2 organ guns, you know, you might want to really defend it with these miners like that, and these Dwarf Warriors are great weapons, so it's really hard for them to get in, so your organ guns can go to work, and your Goblobber can go to work. And then you can kind of focus on, okay, I'm going to have a reasonably cheap Lord. Where are my Lords? I might have a Lord at sort of 1,000, and then what do I put in my front line? I might put, you know, kind of like a bunch of Longbeards, kind of like that. And, you know, I can put a Dwarf Warrior there, bang, bada bing, bada bang, done. I have some defense in the front line. Here's my main force, which is this Goblobber and these 2 organ guns. They're going to go to town. I'm going to chew up their units with it, and you know, away I go. Like, you can imagine how you're actually going to set up your backline and your units to accomplish sort of this. Maybe you don't want to have Longbeards. Maybe you want to go super duper heavy in your front line, and you just want to use, you know, Iron Breakers. You get your Iron Breakers like that, and use your Norgrimling's Iron Breakers and your whole front. Oh, and we can get get you out of here. Can we get 2 out of that? Well, maybe not. Anyways, I don't know. There we go. You have 4 units of Iron Breakers in your front line. Your back line is there. Your Iron Breakers are going to hold forever, and you're just going to shoot with your Goblobber and organ guns. You know, like, you can imagine how you're going to sort of set your lines up to do these things, because miners, Dwarf Warriors with great weapons, and Longbeards with great weapons are now in the mix for every Dawi army. There is no Dawi army that I can imagine now where Dwarf Warriors, miners, or Longbeards are one of them would not be useful in some scenario, because Dawi are the only one without only faction without cav. Well, I suppose you can count the Skaven too, but they have some big fast units that are sort of cav-like, but they have monsters, right? So the Dawi are the only unit without cav or monsters of some sort. And, you know, this is another answer to anti-cav, and it's been really fun, because I've always thought just Slayers. That's it, just Slayers. That's all we have for anti-cav. Turns out, no, miners are like cheap anti-cav. They're like spearmen. You know, Dwarf Warriors and Longbeards with great weapons, they're like halberdiers, or, you know, mid-range spearmen. You know, they're armor piercing. Very, very good in their roles. I guess I'm really happy that these 3 units are now a thing. And I will have to update my video, because I said, don't pick these units in the front line. You know, in my first multiplayer video, I am going to have to update that and say, do pick these units for your backline, and they're going to serve you well. So, anyways, there's a bunch of combined testing I got in the comments, and I can't get it all done, and I can't do it all, but I would love to hear your comments. I would love to especially hear if you've played any games focusing on using these guys as your back line. I would absolutely love to hear that. I would love to hear your thoughts on the Longbeard with great weapons as being the #1 value for Dwarf anti-cav. The #1 value. That's fantastic. And or any other comments you might have. I'm just looking forward to hearing anything you might have in the comment section. And with that said, that's all I have to go over. So I will see you soon.